Hi everyone, I'm Adam and welcome to Sunflower Woodworking. All right, so on this episode, what we're going to be making are some painting easels. We have a friend that this summer in August will have, a program for her church, and they're looking to borrow some easels, just some tabletop easels, so they could do an activity where spouses paint pictures of each other. So we volunteered because that's one of the things we do is support local causes and churches with some of the things that they need. So we volunteered to make the easels that they need for this program. Now, looking around, we've got slabs we could mill. We've um, got different suppliers where we could have bought some beech or some oak to make these, but always looking for that reclaimed angle from time to time to reuse material that's already been milled. Plus, it takes down the amount of production time because it's already cut into shapes. But in this case, we'll see if the savings in time is actually going to cost more time. Because what we've got here is a stack of these tobacco sticks, which are mostly oak. There are probably some poplar in there as well, old poplar. But these sticks, pretty much in the shape that we already need them. Now, what we're going to have to do is one of my buddies over here who wants to remain off camera and I are going to measure them out to keep everything in uniform shape, see what kind of sizes we have. But with being oak, we don't have to make them as thick as we would with other material. So these have already been washed. They've been stacked and stickered for a few days now to dry out. But we wash them to get most of the soil off. And now we're going to measure them, and then we're going to put them onto the planer to get them all to a relatively consistent size and patina. So that's our first step, get them milled down, and then after that, if we have time this evening, we will be cutting them down to 2 foot or 24 inch. I can't do the calculation fast enough, so it's 2.54. So it'd be 45, 60 centimeters-ish. We'll check that later and get back to you. But then we'll cut them down to the 2 foot size and get them ready for cutting the angles and doing all the other stuff we got to do to them. So let's get moving. Okay, so that didn't work out as planned. So the tobacco sticks, we got them in bundles from a guy that got them from a farmer, and they were all different sizes, which we knew and we expected, and some of them were misshapen. So we got a bundle of those that we'll use for gardening and stuff. But after milling, we washed, cleaned, and then started milling them, and we didn't get the sizes thick enough to make what we want to make, how we want to make it. So not all is lost. Because if you've seen any of our other videos, you know that we don't scrap things here very easily. We always find another purpose for them. Unfortunately, we're getting to that point where there's so much stuff that's reusable. We've got to start using it a lot more and making a lot smaller things, a lot of different things. But anyway, all these sticks are still usable. We actually have ideas for another type of bandsaw box, which these are going to be perfect for. So what we did was we had various sizes. And as you can see on the board here, we had everything like 3/4 by 5/8. We had half by 5/8, 7/8 by 5/8, 7/8 by 3/4. We had all these different sizes. So we narrowed our sizes down. We left a few bunches, especially the much thicker ones. We left those alone. But we did a little bit of math, and then we got a bundle of 1/2 inch by 5/8 and a bundle of 7/8 by 5/8, and those are going to be great for another project, which stay tuned to our channels because you'll see those projects. The rest of them we'll tag them. We'll bundle them up, put a tag on the bundle, and then find a place in all of our storage racks to put them until that project comes up. But what we did do is we went to a local lumber mill and we got some 4x4 hard maple, various widths and that, but they were 8-foot boards. I had them cutting down to 4-foot, which what we really need is 2-foot boards, so it's perfect. I mean, they're a little bit longer than 4 feet. They're probably about 4'2" in measurement. So what we'll do is we'll cut those down to 2 feet in width, and then or in length, and then we'll make the strips that we want, the 1-inch strips that we want out of those. So more to come, but let's get cutting. So we got the table saw set up, and we changed out our blade for our glue line rip blade, which gives us nice long rip cuts, straight, and a good smooth finish on it. And we're using our zero clearance rip sled. And by zero clearance, the way this is made is so that there's no gap between the blade and the sled itself. Not going to go through how this is made. There are a lot of great videos already out there on social media on how to do that. But I use these micro jig dovetail jigs. So those are dovetail slots. And what I'll do is I'll measure off the backside. I look at the front here, and there's obviously some chew marks from the milling process. These are surfaced on both sides, on the top and the bottom. So that'll make it a lot easier, so I won't have to go through some planing. Very smooth, very good finish on the top and bottom. So I just need to take off one edge at this point and make it straight off of one edge, because then I'm going to use my fence on here to rip the 1-inch boards that I need later on. I'll check the straightness of this side and then measure off the edge of the sled, because I know this is both sides are parallel and square to the corners. So I'll measure off the back side here and to get the depth of cut that I really need on the front edge here. All right. So simple process, goes pretty quickly. So like I said a minute ago, let's get cutting. So all the rip cuts are done. We've got a stack right here of all the boards that we're going to be using. And now it's time to get over to the table saw and cut them down to 2-foot lengths. What we also did is we created a prototype of the easel just to make sure that all of our dimensions are going to work the way we want them and that it's functional. So it's not 100% complete. It's probably about 80%. We still need to mount this on using dowels, this cross member here that holds the painting while you're working on it. And then we have a chain that's going to go from the center here all the way to the back to keep the legs held together so we don't overextend. But we did this flush cut here. Very happy with how that turned out. Dimensions are still really solid, so it's just, again, confirming the design. Now that we got the prototype done and everything's going to work out the way we want it to, now, like I said, we're going to go in and cut all these boards here down to 2-foot lengths for the 3 legs, and then 16-inch length or widths or lengths for the support piece here in the bottom. So the next round, let's get cutting. So we're done cutting everything to length, and what we've got are 90 2-foot boards and 30 16-inch boards, and which make up the cross members. These make up the 3 legs. So we are making 30 of these. So now we've got the table saw set up. We are going to shape the back legs, which have 2 angles, a 30-degree angle on the bottom. So here we've already started some. 30-degree angle on the bottom, and then we'll do a 45-degree angle on top. And that will give us our nice leg that stands all the way back with that flush mount piece up in the front, right? So it gives great support to the art piece that's being worked on. So let's continue cutting. All right, after a lot of repetition, we completed all of the lower angle cuts using just our table saw miter gauge. Works out very well. We were able to do 2 boards at a time, which speeds it up a little bit. It'd be nice to do more, but let's be safe. Speaking of safety, there's another angle that we've got to cut on the top. So I've taken off one of the legs to use to kind of line things up, but so this is the back brace. It's a 30-degree cut on the bottom there, 45-degree cut on top. But then on the bottom, on the front 2 legs, there's a 15-degree cut going inward to try and balance out the frame. So that 15-degree cut was easy. But then to facilitate that 15-degree cut, we've got a 75-degree cut on the top. And on my small DeWalt table saw, job site saw actually, a 75-degree cut is dangerous. So you have to take the miter gauge way out. It's standing all the way to the side of the table. But what happens too is it's tilted so much that I'm almost off the table by the time I get to the end of the cut. So that means I could end up leaning in, and leaning in, I could end up leaning into the blade. So we're not going to play that game. So what we did do is I took out my crosscut sled. Now I made this a year and a half ago when I first really started diving deeper into more precise woodworking. And the feedback I got was, good Lord, man, that thing's huge. Yeah, it went a little overboard with the size of it. It weighs a ton. I will make another one eventually someday. Even dyed it the DeWalt colors, or tried to. But anyway, because of its size, I can actually fit the legs on here. And then I just took a scrap piece of plywood, threw a couple screws into it, did mark off my 75-degree angle, and then I just lay my legs up against it, got it clamped down there just to give it a little hold. I'll hold it over here while I'm cutting, and then I can get my 75-degree cut out of the top of each leg. I just have to remember I have to do some facing one way, some facing another way. So these 2 I'll do this way. The next 2 I will flip the legs over and do it facing a different direction. Because I need that angle to be opposites, right? Because we have the left and right side. So still a bit of cutting left to do, but let's just keep cutting. Let's keep cutting, just keep cutting, just keep cutting. All right, so a little more time consuming with those cuts because we had to turn off the saw each time, take the boards out, unscrew it, take the boards out, put the next set of boards in, screw it down, line everything up, start the saw, push it through. Whereas the other cuts, because we're just using the miter gauge on the table, we could just leave the saw running and just keep reaching, pushing, pushing, always being aware of the blade and always being aware that it's still running. But it's done. And in addition to the box of hardware parts, the screws and the T-nuts and all that, we've got the 90 legs, we've got the 90 left and right legs, the 30 back legs, and the 30 cross members. So we're going to call it quits for today, and then think about and dream about what to do with all these uniform scrap pieces, because hate to put these in the burn pile, really don't have a use for them, but wondering, maybe there's something unique we could make with some glue. Maybe I'll take it to the kids. They usually come up with some pretty nifty ideas and some far-reaching ideas. But next step is going to be setting up the drill press and drilling the holes for the T-nut and for the screw. So we'll be back. So we're back at it again. So what we're doing now is uh, on the top of the legs where the screw is going to go through, we're going to have a T-nut on one side and then a handle on the other. Now, when those seat, we want to make sure that they're seating flat. So the handle here is seating flat on one side, and the T-nut is perpendicular to the handle, or parallel to the handle, perpendicular to the screw. And it goes right through the center here. So what we did on the prototype, we did it a little backwards. Normally what you want to do is either do the Forstner bit first, or do a pilot hole all the way through, and then do the Forstner bit through the pilot hole on one side, then take the other piece, do the Forstner bit on the other side. Either way, you don't drill the full-size thread hole. So if we look at the actual screw, so this is an M6 bolt, so it's a metric screw. And what we did was we drilled the M6 all the way through the three pieces, which was fine, but we did that before we did the Forstner bit. So as you can see has happened is the T-nut is a little bit over to one side. It's harder to see on the handle, but the handle is also a little bit over to one side. So did not get a good result. Why? Because that hole was there, and then we had to get the Forstner bit. It's got that point on the tip there that if you have no hole or a small hole, that point will seat into that hole, or if there is no hole, it'll create a hole, and then that kind of guides the bit down, right? So what happened was the bit was bouncing back and forth on the hole because it was too big and it couldn't get purchase on the point. Plus, we didn't clamp it down. We weren't using a drill press. We're using a handheld drill. So theoretically, could have gotten a better result if we used a drill press, because at least it will hold the material. We clamp it to the press, and then it will hold and then the bit will go straight down with no movement from somebody's elbow. Plus, now we've got 90 of these things to make. So with 90, we need to create a little bit of a repeatable process, so that makes it a little bit easier to process 90 pieces. The best thing would be if I could just slide it in, pull the lever down, pull it out, and put the next one up there. Still going to try that, but right now we've got a more precise method set up so that we can ensure that everything gets in the right place. So what we've done is we've put our fence that's here on our, it's an attachment, it's a Wen attachment that goes on my good old-fashioned Craftsman, about 25-year-old drill press tabletop, but it serves its purpose, so it's good things. So we take one of the legs. The stop block is set to the distance from the tip to where we want the hole to be, or the recess to be. And then we set the fence so that the bit is going in the center of the stock. And then we took a piece of scrap from milling off these tips, and we used that because it's the same angle to kind of seat underneath the stock there, so that when we push down on the drill press, it doesn't lift up, right? And then we've got a nice jaw clamp that will hold the piece into place. So let me pause there and show you what it looks like. So when everything is seated and set up with the way we want it, that's what it looks like. So the jaw clamp is sitting there holding the stock against the fence. The wedge gives us a little bit of counter pressure as we drill in so it doesn't rock or anything like that. And then the stop block is setting the stock directly under the bit where we want it to be. So we turn this on, and then we just bring it down slowly. Once it gets purchased into the wood, we put a little more pressure. Then once I see that the ring is all the way around, shut it off there. Clean off the dust. Now we've got the recess that we want. Now what you also see there is that we've got a pilot hole for the drill bit to go in What we'll do is once we get all 90 of these recesses made, we'll go back, we'll change out the bit, then we'll go back and then do the hole all the way through. And since we have that pilot hole from the tip of the Forstner bit, it'll help guide the drill bit to go straight down, even though everything, we're going to leave everything set like this, the fence and the stop block, so everything will be positioned back in the exact same spot. Still, it gives the drill bit that we'll use later, it'll give it something, kind of a guide, a pilot hole or a little starter hole, and it'll guide the bit down that spot, so we'll get a nice center hole. So the result we'll get is going to be a lot better than we got on the prototype, but that's why it's a prototype. And that's why I often do a prototype when I'm doing mass production of stuff. Don't do it very often. I prefer custom work, but whenever I have to do repetitive things, I will do a pilot of it, repetitive products. I'll do a pilot or test of the assembled unit just to see how everything fit together, see what my measurements might look like. If it gets scrapped, it gets scrapped, no big deal. But at least we get a lot of things figured out before we get into the mass production process. So with that, going to fire up the drill and just start swapping out boards. We get these recesses all done. Here we go. So we got all 90 of them, but we changed our process just a little bit midstream. So originally we had this wedge sitting underneath the stock right back here to provide a little bit of support. Now, why I was concerned about that was if I look at one of these, I look at where the hole is in relation to the wedge shape of the angle, it actually oversets just a little bit. So my concern was that as I put pressure down on the bit, they would cause the stock to rock backwards a little bit, right? So it rock that way, thus changing the direction which the bit was milling into the wood, which then would change the direction that the drill bit will go later, or that the hole is facing, or how things will seat. Didn't want to do that. So I was playing it safe. Now, years ago, I didn't play it very safe. I was like, the heck with it, would be fine. But over the last year or two, as I got into caring more about the finished look of everything I make, started taking a little bit more time, thinking things through a little bit more, trying to balance things out between speed, efficiency, and quality. So I think the pendulum sometimes swings a little bit too far the other way. Now, what I noticed was, even though there isn't support under that back piece, once I get the stock down, get it seated, and then get it clamped, if I just put my hand back here, it was enough to counter the pressure. The board did not move off of the sacrificial plate down there underneath it. It didn't move. So I was getting good results. So, like I said, about halfway through, one of the pieces volunteered as tribute, and we went ahead and gave it a try. It worked. Went to the next one a little bit cautiously. It worked. And before you know it, all of them were working. So it saved us a little bit of time. We did have one that I didn't check that it was against the stop block before I started drilling. I got a few bites into it and then noticed that. So try to figure out how to fix that up later on. But all in all, they look great. So now we're going to take the bit out, leave the fence and the stop block where they are. But we're going to take the bit out, swap it out for a drill bit, and then we're going to drill the hole all the way through. Let me clear off some of the sawdust. You see this plate here? Well, there's actually a hole underneath it so that you can go all the way through the stock. And the table does have a plate that is nice and finished that goes in there. But I was going to be going through the stock, and instead of putting the sacrificial piece on top and then still run the risk of it going into the actual nicer plate, we just took the multi-tool over here, took a scrap piece of 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch ply, and then just cut it to shape and stuck it in there. So we're going to get the drill bit swapped out and get drilling. Got the side legs, the front legs done. Got the table all reset now and marked up for the middle leg. So 30 more to go. Let's keep drilling. So after about an hour of drilling, we finally got everything drilled. And then we took our deburring tool and put it on our drill press. Now this thing was not intended for this. Well, at least I don't think it was, because it came in a pack of three different sizes, and it had an orange handle. And I got that from Harbor Freight. It was a nice cheap tool, but discovered a long time ago that I could put them in my drill or put them in the drill press and just turn the speed down. And then that's a great deburring tool to get all of the the little bits of grain and the bits of wood that are left from the drilling process. By going online, maybe Freud or Amana might make some as well. But you know what? For my shop, these work great. Every so often, I'll take a sharpening stone to them just to sharpen them up a little bit, but not too much, because I like the fact that they aren't super sharp, because then I'm not getting a lot of tear out of additional material. It's just kind of rubbing and grinding a little bit of the wood, the burrs and stuff that are left behind from the drilling. So we've got a nice, pretty stack. So everything is cut and shaped. Everything's got holes. All the holes have been cleaned out. So the next step is going to be sanding. But before we do the sanding, I'm going to take a random sampling. So we are supposed to have 30 easels in this batch. I might take 3 to 10 easels just randomly out of the stack, and take the screw and just kind of put them together just to make sure everything lines up. Okay, so we are going to move on to sanding, but we had to do a few things before we got to this stage. So after doing the random sampling, it was discovered that yes, in fact, all of them, at least it was consistent, but all of them, when you put the handle in, so you get the focus there. When you put the handle in, the hole that we made with the Forstner bit was a little bit south of or a little bit north of where we needed it to be. But it was only a tiny bit. So I was able to use the Forstner bit again. And while this is ugly at the moment, we use the Forstner bit again to extend that hole a little bit further south so that it now seats correctly. Now the nice thing is the way it seats, where it's going to cover up that ring that was made from having to make that second hole. And we'll try to sand, when we do the sanding here in a little bit, we'll try to sand out that upper ring so it looks nice and neat. So what else we've done is on the legs, the back leg and on the cross member. So if we look over here at our model, at the prototype, we've got this cross member where the picture actually sits on top of this. Had to figure out where we wanted that to be, which is about 3 inches up. And we've got to put a hole in the center here and a hole in the back of the center leg. And that is because we're going to have a chain that goes from the front here to the back to prevent people from overextending the legs and the legs collapsing. So once you put some weight on it and you start painting, you don't have this where the leg just starts wandering away from the artist. So we're going to put a chain in there, and we have some chain stops to help with that. So in the stock here, so for all 30 cross members, went ahead and put a hole in the middle there. And then for all the back legs, we put a hole in the back leg. And to figure out where we had to put that, we figured out from the front where the center of the front is, which is 3.5 inches. Then we measured a vertical to 3.5 inches in the back, made a mark across, and then measured from the tip of the leg up to that mark. And then that told us where to set our stop block here on the drill press. And then we just ran them through one after the other, drilled that hole, and that's that. All right, so just like in the prototype, we've got to go back and make some more cuts to our legs. So we made the prototype, the legs actually come out to about here. So we've got to bring that down so that it's flush with the top of the center leg. So we're going to set up the crosscut sled on the table saw and make up some jigs to kind of get it consistent so we can mass cut the 90 legs that have to be cut to be flush with the top of the center leg. So without any further explanation, let's get cutting. So we cut down all of the left and right legs, and what we did was we did a random sampling like we did before and put a couple of them together just to make sure everything was fitting up. So what was happening on the center legs is that the center leg was coming out a little proud beyond the surface of the left and right leg, which is okay, but it was a little too much for our liking. So what we decided to do is go back to the crosscut sled and the table saw and shave off just a little bit of this center leg. So with that random sampling that we did, we saw that they're all pretty much about the same. There's a little bit of variation, a little bit here and there, depending on where the hole is. And even though we use the drill press, it is an old Craftsman drill press. It's a good drill press, but it's not very high on the accuracy scale. So the chuck moves a little bit left and right, and that, so the holes don't always match up exactly. So that's caused that center leg to be just a little bit proud. But as long as we get it pretty darn close, highest quality possible as always, but if we can get it pretty darn close to being flush with the front of the left and right legs, we'll be very happy. So let's get cutting. So now that all the cutting's done, now all that's left is sanding and finishing. But then, how do you sand efficiently and quickly 150 parts and not have to spend an entire day and a half doing it? And a lot of great ideas were shared. Central Indiana Woodworkers, a lot of great ideas came out there again. And we tried some of them out, but we weren't getting the results that we wanted to get, and the efficiency that we were gaining was not enough compared to the risks and other things that were involved. So we do have a belt sander that has a disc sander built in. We did try to do that a little bit, but it was leaving different kinds of marks, so on and so on. So what we decided to do was just clamp them down here using our bench dog clamps, clamp them on the MFT here, just gently to keep them from sliding around. And then we're just going to use our RO sander or random orbital sander to work through the grits and sand this stuff down. We're already a pretty good finish as it is right now, so we're not going to do like a 60 or 80 grits. We're going to start off at 120 and then take it up to 220 or 240 and probably stop there. We are going to be using a polyacrylic finish on this just to provide, we don't want to change the color of the wood. We want to keep it natural, and we want to provide a little bit of protection with a surface finish so that the paint, because these are easels, there's going to be a lot of paint, so the paint doesn't seep in and paint can be wiped off of the easel without any concerns to the finish. So without any other thoughts or comments, let's get sanding. So after about 6.5-ish hours, the sanding is done. Here we have 150 pieces sanded on all sides. They feel great, but definitely a lesson learned in this process. And some friends and some people had warned me about it, that hard maple is brutal when it comes, is one of those woods that's brutal when it comes to sanding. Went through a lot of sanding discs, and it just tore them up. A lot of hard sanding. So if you ever work with hard maple, just be prepared for sanding. So plane when you can, get a good saw blade so it doesn't leave any marks. We had all those things and still had to do a lot of hard work with the sanding. Some tooth marks, a little bit of burn marks and things like that, but wasn't too bad. I mean, it was a lot of labor, but the result is great. One thing I noticed about it once you got into the higher grits, very soft feel. And now it is a very hard wood, but the finish on it from the sanding has a very soft feel, very smooth, great feel. First time working with hard maple, and other than the sore elbows from hours of sanding, it feels pretty. I mean, the wood is great, and it looks great. The edges are nice and crisp. The grain looks great. It's going to look even better once we get that denatured alcohol on it to later in the week. Get them cleaned up and get them ready for finishing. So that's when we'll be back, is when we get ready to do the finish. But right now, the wife is flashing the lights. It is time for dinner, and Mrs. Woodworking does not like me being late, so I'm heading in. See you guys soon. So we've got two more things to get us closer to that finish line. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to attach the part that's going to hold the painting or the canvas. We're going to attach those using some speed set glue and some dowels. Attach those to each of the different frames. And then we have some beaded chain that we're going to cut into the segment. So we already measured on one of the easels to see how long we need that chain to be, because we want the chain to pretty much get it where the front of the back leg is flush with the sides of the front legs, and you'll see that later on. We want that to be flush, because if the leg is too far away, the top's going to come forward. If it's too close, the top's going to go backwards. So we want that to be nice and flush. So we got one like that, and then we measured the chain out with our little clasps that we have to screw the chain into both the back leg and the part that holds the painting. So that chain's going to connect it to prevent the leg from going back too far, because there's nothing worse there are a lot of things worse, but one of the bad things when you're an artist and you're trying to paint on an easel, if you're in the middle of painting and all of a sudden the easel starts moving away from you, it starts running away. And that's because that back leg just starts to open up more. So the chain prevents the back leg from opening up. It also gives the user an indication about how far back they should put the leg before they tighten the screw down. So we'll go ahead and get those pieces cut, and then we're going to go ahead and install the part that holds the canvas onto all the leg sets and get one more step closer. So let's get gluing. Whoa. Now, I know I'm going to get a message about this, or someone's going to leave a comment, because I did post a video a week ago, a week before filming this, about using a credit card or using some form of card when using an oscillating multi-tool to avoid marring on the wood. But in what you just saw, I didn't do that. Why? Why am I not following my own advice? Besides the fact that I don't know a woodworker that doesn't once in a while follow their own advice. Specific reason. Number one, I'm doing a lot of these cuts. So I was thinking, how can I do this more effectively and efficiently? Now, this is hard maple. It doesn't mar as easily as the Baltic birch plywood I did in another video, or pine, or even some other woods. It's a very dense wood. But even so, I'm not putting the blade down onto the wood like this. I'm tapering it upwards, so you can see there's a little bit of shadow there. When I cut, I'm doing it on an upward angle to go through. It's still leaving about a 32nd of an inch of wood, but that's something that I can easily take off with the sander. because the dowels are not hard maple. The dowels are beech. So it will come, they sand down pretty easily. And then any little tiny marks that I've made, because I've done that many already, did make a couple little marks here and there, but the sander was able to take that out very quickly because it was just a slight marring. So yes, I do follow my own advice. I do use that card trick all the time. But on this particular project, because of the material, because of the process, and because of what I'm doing, I can adjust my process to go a little bit more smoothly. But on other things, I won't take the chance, especially on softer woods or woods that, like plywood, that have a veneer, and nicking the veneer could cause a little bit of tear out on the veneer, or it's not very strong on the veneer, especially plywood. So any little nick, you're going to maybe expose a layer below that. So I won't take the chance on things like that. So going to continue. Just in case you're wondering, want to make sure I explain that. So we're just about to start putting some finish down on these easels, but we had to figure out a way to set them up to dry. And while our trusty MFT and PTs are pretty good size, they're not going to fit 30 of these easels unless we lean them against something, which then is going to leave marks on the finish, or we have to do one side and then do the other, creating more process, more time. So we burned a few brain cells and came up with high speed, low drag. We got these stickers. These are the sticks that we use to put between our stacks of wood to help them dry. So we got one on each end of the table. We've got these little tiny clamps here that clamp to the table and then to the stickers. And then we got a scrap piece of 1/4 inch birch strung across that. And then what we'll do is, after we finish putting the finish on each of these, we'll put the screw back through the top. So the screw back through the top, and then we will just simply hang that on there, and then we can hang about 20 to 25 of them across this board. Is that the best way to do it? Who knows? If you got an idea, leave a comment. We're always looking for ideas, but high speed, low drag. We're a small shop. We don't have a lot of budget for fancy racks and stuff. If you do have fancy racks, awesome. Would love to see them. But we don't have those, at least not today. God willing, we'll have better racks someday. But for now, we find a way to do it. And this is going to work for our needs. So without any further ado, let's get finishing. All right, so finishing. We put 2 coats of the polyacrylic on both the A-frame and the back leg. And I was reminded why I like the polyacrylic finish. It's like the Rubio monocoat of surface finishes. It's very forgiving, very easy to apply, very easy to get a really good texture on it. And everything came out very, very well after just 2 coats of the polyacrylic. So now we're on to the last few steps here to bring these things to life. Number 1, we're going to drill into the back legs, these little holes all the way across. That's a screw hole for the screw. So we have the chains, which we'll show you. We have the beaded chains that we're going to feed through this hole, and these little clips that hold on to the last bead and then screw into the surface to permanently affix those bead chains onto the back of the back leg. And then there's a hole on the front of the A-frame. See if we can see one here. So there's a hole on the A-frame. It comes through. We're going to do the same thing, put a hole on a tiny little hole beneath that hole for the screw. Now we did try because the screws are so small, they're not going to split much wood. So we tried to just to put the screw in without pre-drilling a hole. And if you have ever worked with hard maple before, it's my first time, it's stronger than the screw. So they are tiny little screws. So as we were screwing it in, it just destroyed the head. We torqued it, and the head just spun right off of it. So definitely have to pre-drill the holes on all these to get that screw in there. So we'll have a small bit, probably a 1/16 inch bit to do the screw holes. Then after we do that and get those chains fed through, the other thing we have to add to these A-frames, or to the A-frames and the back legs, are these feet. So they're rubber feet because wood, and if you have this on a table surface, it might slide around a bit. And we wanted this to be nice and stable for the user. So we got these rubber feet just for a few bucks for a bag of 100. And we'll make holes in the bottom of the leg, the back leg, and the bottoms of the A-frame legs. And then we'll screw those in, screw in these feet. So that will help be a little stopper so it doesn't slide. They are pretty sticky. I was kind of expecting them to be plastic, but I was very pleased when I found out that they are actually rubber and they do have some stick to them. So good times there. Right now we're going to get drilling, drill those holes on the frames to put the chain through. We're going to drill the holes and put on the feet, and then we're going to feed that chain and screw the chains on. And then we should be, unless I'm forgetting something, should be at a finished product. So let's get cracking. So that's it. The easels are all together, all finished, and all ready to go. As you see here, we've got them all assembled. We did put the chain on using these little clips down here to hold that ball chain in place on one end. Plus the friction between this joint here and the wood and the chain will also help keep it into place. But the chain, like we said before, is just there to make sure we're not overextending the leg. It does get it so that this is flush, so the canvas can go on here nice and easily, and then the leg is extended and very stable. And we did get, as you saw, all those feet on them, which will give us a little bit more friction against the surface that they stand on to keep them from sliding around while the artist is painting. So this was a great project. It's the first time working with hard maple, first time making easels, first time doing mass production of easels. So a lot of learnings that we're going to carry on to future projects. We're thankful for our friend and for their church for trusting us to make these easels. We're going to arrange now for the pickup, and hopefully it's going to serve their purpose and do well with it. So that's it for this video. Definitely give it a like or a follow. Whatever platform you're watching this on, we put it on quite a few platforms to kind of increase the reach. So give us a follow on our channel. Hit the like button. But if you've got ideas, if you've got different ways of doing things, we're very open to learning more, learning different ways to do things. So leave a comment. We'd love to see what you have to say about it. So with that, as always, let's close out in some prayer. Heavenly Father, you provide us so much, and as always, we're eternally grateful for your provisions. We are thankful that we have been able to use these to directly serve your purposes, although everything we do is serving your purpose, but this time it's for your church family, for your body. We ask that these easels be used in the program in which they're going to be used to strengthen marriages, to strengthen families, because that is your design and that is what you want from us, to have great, strong families. And there are so many ways to do that. We hope that this program is successful for the church and for all those who participate. Father, we thank you for all your blessings, all of your mercies, the things you provide, the things you forgive. And most of all, we thank you for our Savior, Jesus Christ. Through him, all things are possible. And in his name we pray. Amen. All right. So with that, we're going to sign off. If you can see the shop right now, it is a total disaster. We have so many projects on the way. You can see our production schedule by going to www.sunflowerww.com. It should be somewhere there on the screen. And if you subscribe to The Garden, which is our member site, doesn't cost anything. You can become one of the planters. We don't charge for it. But if you're a planter, you can see our production schedule, see the projects we have coming up. And at the end of each of those projects, we publish the videos out there to share our experiences, share what we learned, and just to share with you. So hope your measurements stay true. Stay safe in your shops. Keep your cuts straight. And this is Adam with Sunflower Woodworking. Take care. God bless.